The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Vorth barely noticed as he stared at the flickering hologram before him. Deep in the basement levels of the Galactic Council's War Archive Division, surrounded by towers of data crystals and humming processors, he had stumbled upon something that made no sense at all. The fragment had arrived 3 days ago with a batch of recovered materials from the Terios 7 battlefield. Most of the data was standard stuff: tactical communications, sensor readings, the usual debris of war that historians like him sifted through to piece together what really happened when species tried to kill each other. But this fragment was different. It was corrupted, barely readable, and showed something impossible. Vorth adjusted his spectacles and played the recording again. The image quality was terrible, full of static and interference, but he could make out the basic scene. A rocky canyon on Terios 7, smoke drifting between the stone walls and bodies everywhere. Krillian bodies. Dozens of them, maybe more, scattered across the ground like broken toys. The Krillians were supposed to be unstoppable. Everyone in the galaxy knew that. They stood 3 meters tall, had armor-plated skin, and reflexes faster than a photon torpedo. Their warrior culture had dominated 17 star systems, and they had never, ever been defeated in ground combat, until the humans showed up. But this recording showed something beyond even human capabilities. In the grainy footage, a single figure moved through the canyon like death itself. The shape was clearly humanoid, but wrong somehow. Too fast, too fluid, too deadly. It would disappear behind a boulder and emerge somewhere impossible, weapons firing with perfect accuracy. Krillian warriors who had never known fear were falling like wheat before a scythe. Still watching that fake garbage? Vorth looked up to see his colleague Dren approaching with a steaming cup of something that smelled like burnt electronics. Dren was younger, louder, and absolutely convinced that humans were primitive creatures who had gotten lucky in their recent conflicts. "The metadata checks out," Vorth said quietly. "The timestamp matches the battle records. The quantum signatures are authentic." Dren snorted, a sound like a deflating balloon. "Humans are clever, I'll give them that. They probably spent months creating this propaganda piece. Look at it, Vorth. One human killing an entire Krillian battalion? It's impossible." "That's what bothers me," Vorth replied, rewinding the recording to a particularly clear sequence. "If you were going to fake something, why make it this unbelievable? Why not show a squad of humans or some new weapon technology? Why show something so impossible that everyone would immediately call it fake?" "Because humans are stupid," Dren said with absolute certainty. "They overplayed their hand. Probably thought we'd be intimidated by their super soldier fantasy." Vorth said nothing, but he zoomed in on a section where the figure paused behind cover. For just a moment, the atmospheric interference cleared, and he could see details. The figure was definitely human-sized, wearing what looked like standard combat armor. But the way it moved when the shooting started again was anything but standard. It didn't run from cover to cover like a normal soldier would. It flowed like liquid mercury, always seeming to be exactly where enemy fire wasn't. "I'm going to run a full analysis," Vorth announced. "Waste of time," Dren replied, but he pulled up a chair anyway. "Though I admit it'll be fun to pick apart. They're special effects. Humans are getting better at digital manipulation, but they're not that good." The analysis programs hummed to life, scanning every pixel of the corrupted footage. Gravitational readings, atmospheric data, light spectrum analysis, everything that could prove whether the recording was genuine or fabricated. While they waited, Vorth pulled up what he knew about human military capabilities. Humans were tough, he had to admit that. They had surprised everyone by not only surviving first contact with hostile species, but actually winning several conflicts. They were adaptable, creative, and had a disturbing tendency to keep fighting even when logic said they should surrender. But they were still biological creatures with clear physical limitations. "Here we go," Dren said as the first results appeared. "Gravitational readings are consistent with Terios 7. Atmospheric composition matches records. Light spectrum analysis indicates... Wait, that can't be right. Vorth leaned forward. What is it? The light spectrum analysis indicates natural illumination from Terios 7's twin suns. No artificial lighting, no holographic projection markers. Either the humans have developed new technology we don't know about, or... Dren's voice trailed off. Or this is real, Vorth finished. They ran more tests. Particle analysis showed genuine Krillian blood. Energy weapon discharge patterns matched. Known Krillian rifles fired in panic and desperation. Even the way dust settled after explosions followed proper physics models. Every test they ran supported the same impossible conclusion. There has to be an explanation, Dren muttered, but his earlier confidence was gone. Maybe the humans drugged the Krillians, or used some kind of nerve agent that made them clumsy and slow. Vorth pulled up the medical analysis of recovered Krillian bodies from the battlefield. No toxins found, no signs of chemical warfare. They died from precise energy weapon wounds and kinetic trauma. Professional, efficient kills. Then it's impossible, Dren said flatly. No single being could do this. Not human, not Krillian, not anyone. The figure in that recording would need reaction times faster than our best combat computers, physical coordination that defies biology, and tactical awareness that borders on precognition. But even as Dren spoke, Vorth was running probability calculations. What if it wasn't impossible? What if humans had capabilities they hadn't revealed? The galaxy had underestimated humans before. Everyone thought they would be easy prey when they first ventured into space. Everyone was wrong then, too. I want to run a full investigation, Vorth said finally. Cross-reference this with all available human military data. Check for similar incidents on other battlefields. If this is real, there might be more recordings. You're wasting your time, Dren replied, but he was already pulling up search parameters. But fine. When we prove this is fake, I want full credit for debunking human propaganda. As the search programs began their work, Vorth stared at the frozen image on his screen. The mysterious figure was caught mid-motion, weapons raised, surrounded by the aftermath of impossible violence. Something about the posture, the way the figure held itself, suggested this wasn't luck or technology or drugs. This was skill. Deadly, terrifying skill, and somewhere in the galaxy, Vorth realized with growing dread, this human was still alive. Dr. Nex had seen many strange things in her career as a xenobiologist, but the datapad Vorth placed on her desk made her question everything she knew about human physiology. The cafe around them buzzed with the usual chatter of council employees, on their lunch break, but Nex felt as if she were sitting in perfect silence. You want me to analyze what exactly? She asked, scrolling through the preliminary findings Vorth had compiled over the past week. Motion analysis from battlefield. Recordings, Vorth replied, nervously adjusting his collar. We need to know if what we're seeing is physically possible for a human being. Nex pulled up the enhanced footage on her personal viewer, squinting at the grainy images. As head of the xenobiology department, she had studied human anatomy extensively. Humans were fascinating creatures, more durable than they appeared, with remarkable adaptability and an unusual capacity for rapid healing. But what she was seeing in these recordings was beyond even the most optimistic projections of human capability. This figure is moving at approximately 47 kilometers per hour across uneven terrain, she murmured, running calculations. That's already at the edge of human possibility, but look at this. She highlighted a sequence where the figure changed direction mid-leap. The G-forces involved in this maneuver would cause most species to lose consciousness. For a human, it should result in immediate joint failure and possible bone fracture. But it's possible? Vorth pressed. Theoretically, perhaps for a few seconds. But this recording spans 23 minutes of continuous combat. No human could maintain this level of performance. Their cardiovascular system would collapse from oxygen debt within the first 5 minutes. Vorth leaned back in his chair, looking disappointed but not surprised. So it's fake? I didn't say that, Nex replied carefully. I said it should be impossible based on our understanding of human biology. But we've been wrong about humans before. She pulled up a file from her personal research archive. 3 years ago, I consulted on a case where human prisoners of war survived in conditions that should have killed them within days. 6 months later, I analyzed tissue samples from human soldiers who had recovered from injuries that should have been permanent. We keep discovering that humans are more resilient than our models predict. Are you saying this could be real? I'm saying we need more data. Nex transferred the files to her main laboratory system. Give me 48 hours. I want to run a full biomechanical analysis. While Nex worked in her laboratory, Vorth continued his own investigation. He had found 3 more recordings, each showing similar impossible feats performed by what appeared to be the same figure. The image quality was consistently poor, always obscured by smoke, distance, or atmospheric interference, but the fighting style was unmistakable. The breakthrough came when he cross-referenced the battle locations with shipping records. All 4 incidents had occurred near human trade routes, but in each case, there was no record of human military vessels in the area. No reinforcements, no backup, no extraction teams. Just cargo ships carrying medical supplies or agricultural equipment. Whoever this is, they're not part of standard human military operations, Vorth muttered to himself, staring at the data streams flowing across his monitor. Talking to yourself again? Dren appeared at his workstation, carrying a stack of analysis reports. I've been checking with intelligence networks. No human military unit claims responsibility for these actions. In fact, human command seems as confused as we are about these incidents. What do you mean? I mean, when we discreetly asked human military attachés about these battles, they seemed genuinely surprised by the outcomes. They expected much higher casualties on their side. Some of them started asking us questions about what really happened. Vorth felt a chill run down his spine. So either the humans are playing an extremely deep game, or these recordings show someone operating outside official human military structure, Dren finished. A rogue agent, maybe. Or something worse. 2 days later, Dr. Nex called Vorth to her laboratory. The xenobiologist looked tired, as if she hadn't slept since their meeting. Computer screens lined every wall, showing complex biomechanical models and endless streams of analysis data. I ran every test I could think of, she began without preamble. Bone density requirements, muscle fiber stress analysis, neural pathway, response times, metabolic demands, everything. And it's impossible, she said flatly. No unmodified human could do what this figure does in these recordings. The reaction times alone would require a nervous system processing information at roughly 3 times normal human capacity. Vorth's heart sank, but Nex held up a hand. However, I also ran projections based on theoretical human enhancement technologies. Military augmentation, genetic modification, cybernetic integration. Most of it is purely speculative, but there are some interesting possibilities. She brought up a holographic model of human anatomy. Humans have always been excellent candidates for enhancement because their biology is so adaptable. Unlike most species which reject foreign modifications, humans seem to integrate new technologies remarkably well. Are you saying this figure is some kind of enhanced human? I'm saying it's possible, but if so, the level of modification would be extraordinary. We're talking about enhancement programs that would make their subject barely human in the biological sense. Enhanced reflexes, reinforced skeletal structure, modified muscle fibers, possibly even neural augmentation to process tactical information faster. Vorth stared at the anatomical model, watching as Nex highlighted the various theoretical modifications. Would such enhancements be detectable? Not from these recordings, the image quality is too poor, but there might be other ways to confirm it. Nex pulled up a new file. I've been researching human military history. Officially, they deny any enhancement programs. but there are gaps in their records. Black projects, classified research, missing persons who were listed as military volunteers. Missing persons? Soldiers who volunteered for classified assignments and were never seen again. Officially, they died in training accidents or were killed in action in locations that remain classified. But there are no bodies, no detailed reports, just names removed from active duty rosters. The implications were staggering. If humans had developed enhancement technologies advanced enough to create soldiers like the one in the recordings, and if they had kept such programs completely secret from the galactic community, then everyone's intelligence on human military capability was worthless. How many? Vorth asked quietly. Missing persons? Over the past 20 years, approximately, 200 human soldiers have disappeared into classified programs. Most were elite troops, special operations personnel, individuals with exceptional service records. Vorth felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath him. 200 enhanced humans, possibly with capabilities far beyond anything the galaxy had imagined, and no one knew where they were or what they were doing. "We need to brief the Council," he said finally. Brief them on what? That we think humans might have secret enhancement programs producing super soldiers? We have no proof, just speculation and impossible recordings. Then we need proof, Vorth replied. Because if we're right, and if humans have been hiding soldiers like this, then every military assessment, every strategic analysis, every peace treaty in the galaxy is based on incomplete information. As they spoke, neither of them noticed the message indicator blinking on Vorth's communication device. The Council had made a decision about the mysterious recordings. They would be presented as a case study in identifying falsified war documents, demonstrating to the galaxy how easily propaganda could be created and spread. The presentation was scheduled for next week, and representatives from across the galaxy had already been invited to attend. Commander Kell had been studying warfare for longer than most species had been spacefaring, and in all that time she had learned to trust patterns. Wars might seem chaotic to civilians, but to a trained military historian they revealed themselves. Through repetition, habit, and the unconscious signatures that every fighter carried into battle. The human recordings that Vorth had brought to her attention bothered her for reasons that went beyond their impossible nature. She sat in her private office, surrounded by holographic displays showing tactical analyses from hundreds of conflicts, and played the footage frame by frame for the 17th time. Computer, enhance Section 4 Alpha 7 and run movement. Pattern analysis, she commanded. The system hummed as it processed the request, overlaying trajectory lines and velocity markers onto the grainy footage. Kell leaned forward, studying the way the mysterious figure moved between cover positions. There was something familiar about it, something that tugged at the edges of her memory. Display comparative analysis with known human combat styles, she ordered. New data streams appeared, showing movement patterns from documented human military engagements. Most human soldiers fought in predictable ways. Advance and retreat patterns learned from their training, tactical doctrines applied with mechanical precision. But this figure was different. The movements were too fluid, too creative, too perfectly adapted to the specific terrain and enemy positions. Computer. Cross-reference with historical human military records. Authorization Kell 77 Alpha. Warning, the computer replied in its emotionless voice. Requested data requires enhanced security clearance. Some files may contain classified information obtained through intelligence networks. Proceed, Kell commanded. The enhanced database contained intelligence gathered over decades of contact with humanity. Most of it was routine. Troop movements, ship deployments, the usual material that military attachés shared with their galactic counterparts. But buried deep in the classified sections were references to human operations that had never been officially acknowledged. Cross-reference movement patterns with subject designated Ghost of Europa, Kell said slowly, reading from a heavily redacted intelligence file. The computer processed the request for several long minutes. When the results appeared, Kel felt her blood turn cold. Pattern match probability, 87%. Note: insufficient data for definitive conclusion. Subject file heavily classified by human authorities. Kel pulled up everything the database contained about the ghost of Europa. It wasn't much. Fragments of intelligence reports, whispered stories passed between human soldiers, references in classified communications that intelligence networks had intercepted and decoded. But what little existed painted a picture of something that shouldn't have been possible. According to the scattered reports, the ghost of Europa had been a single human operative who had ended the Martian rebellion by infiltrating the rebel stronghold of New Geneva and eliminating their entire command structure in one night. 47 confirmed kills, including some of the most dangerous insurgent leaders humanity had ever produced, accomplished by one person in less than 6 hours. The official human records claimed the stronghold had been taken by a full battalion after a week-long siege. The classified intelligence suggested something very different. Computer, analyze weapon signatures from Terrio 7 recordings. Compare with known Ghost of Europa operational patterns. More data flowed across her displays. The figure in the recordings used a specific combination of energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, switching between them with tactical precision based on target type and engagement distance. The weapon selection patterns matched fragments of intelligence about ghost operations with 91% accuracy. But according to human records, the Ghost of Europa had died during a classified mission 8 years ago. The file contained no details about the mission or the circumstances of death, just a simple notation that the operative had been killed in action and the body never recovered. Kel stood and paced to her window, looking out at the sprawling complex of the Galactic Council headquarters. If her analysis was correct, then either the human records were false or someone who was supposed to be dead had been fighting on battlefields across the galaxy. Computer, search all available databases for similar tactical signatures. Expand. Search to include any engagement where enemy casualties were disproportionately high relative to reported human forces. Processing. Search parameters may require several hours to complete. While the search ran, Kel began her own investigation into human military structure. She had always assumed that humans organized their forces the same way most species did. Clear command structures, documented units, transparent chains of authority. But the deeper she dug into human military organization, the more gaps she found. Entire budget allocations with no corresponding unit assignments. Personnel transfers to facilities that didn't appear on any official roster. Research projects that consumed enormous resources, but produced no documented results. It was as if the human military had a shadow structure running parallel to their official forces. Commander Kel, her assistant's voice came through the communication system. You have an urgent message from the War Archive Division. Transfer it to my private terminal, Kel replied. The message was from Vorth, and it contained troubling news. The Council had decided to use the recordings as an example of human propaganda, scheduling a galaxy-wide presentation to demonstrate how easily false battlefield footage could be created and disseminated. Kel felt her heart's race. If her analysis was correct, the Council was about to publicly humiliate themselves by calling authentic recordings fake. Worse, they were about to reveal to the entire galaxy that they had no idea what human military forces were truly capable of. Computer priority search. Cross-reference all available data on current human diplomatic personnel assigned to Galactic Council. Include personal histories, military service records, and any classified intelligence. Processing. Warning. Some requested data may violate diplomatic privacy protocols. Override. Authorization, Kel 77 Alpha. The search results appeared within minutes, and Kel's worst fears were confirmed. Among the human diplomatic staff was a new military attaché who had been assigned just 3 months ago. His official records showed a distinguished but unremarkable career in human space forces, but his personal details included physical characteristics and service history that matched what little was known about the ghost of Europa with disturbing accuracy. The attaché was listed as Alex Kane, age 34, former Special Operations, officer who had taken early retirement due to injuries sustained in classified operations. The injury reports were sealed, but the timeline matched perfectly with the supposed death of the ghost of Europa. Computer. Analyze facial structure comparison between attaché Kane and enhanced imagery from Terios 7 recordings. Insufficient image quality for definitive facial recognition. However, physical dimensions, body structure, and movement patterns show significant correlation. Kel slumped in her chair, the full implications hitting her like a physical blow. If Alex Kane was indeed the ghost of Europa, then he wasn't just any enhanced human operative. He was someone who had single-handedly ended a planetary rebellion and had supposedly died on a mission so classified that even the circumstances of his death were secret. And tomorrow, the Galactic Council planned to publicly declare his combat. Recordings to be sophisticated fakes while he sat in the audience as humanity's official military representative. Computer, immediate priority message to the Council Security Office. Subject, potential security breach regarding tomorrow's presentation. Request immediate meeting with Chief of Security. Message sent. Reply received. Meeting scheduled for 0800 tomorrow morning, 1 hour before presentation begins. Kel looked at her chronometer. She had less than 12 hours to convince the Council that they were about to make a catastrophic error. 12 hours to prove that the recordings were real, that humans possessed capabilities they had hidden from the galaxy, and that their new military attaché was quite possibly one of the most dangerous individuals who had ever set foot in the Council chambers. As she began compiling her evidence, Kel couldn't shake the feeling that even if she succeeded in convincing the Council, it might already be too late. Word of the presentation had spread throughout the diplomatic community. Representatives from hundreds of worlds would be watching as the galaxy's most powerful organization either revealed their complete ignorance about human capabilities or publicly accused humanity of elaborate deception. Either way, Kel realized, everything was about to change. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never felt so imposing to Vorth as he stood at the presentation podium, looking out at nearly 3,000 delegates from across the known galaxy. Beings of every imaginable shape and size filled the massive amphitheater, their attention focused on the enormous holographic displays that would soon show what the Council believed to be elaborate human propaganda. In the front row of the diplomatic section, Vorth could see the human delegation. They looked relaxed, almost bored, as if attending yet another routine council session. Their military attaché, an unremarkable-looking man named Alex Kane, was reviewing something on a small data pad, seemingly uninterested in the proceedings that were about to dissect his species' supposed deception. "Honorable delegates," Vorth began, his voice amplified throughout the hall. "Today we present a case study in the identification and analysis of falsified warfare documentation. The War Archive Division has investigated recordings allegedly showing human military capabilities that exceed known biological limitations." A murmur of anticipation rippled through the audience. Everyone had heard rumors about impossible human war footage circulating through intelligence networks. Now they would see the Council's official analysis. Behind Vorth, the first recording began to play on screens visible throughout the hall. The grainy footage from Terios 7 showed the mysterious figure moving through the rocky canyon, leaving a trail of Krillian bodies in their wake. Even in the poor image quality, the impossible speed and precision of the lone human was clearly visible. "As you can see," Vorth continued, trying to keep his voice steady, "this footage purports to show a single human operative eliminating an entire Krillian battalion. Our initial analysis will demonstrate why this is clearly impossible." Dr. Nex took the stage, her presentation focusing on human biological limitations. She displayed complex charts showing bone density, muscle fiber capacity, and nervous system response times, all proving that no unmodified human could perform the feats shown in the recordings. The figure in these recordings moves at speeds that would shatter human leg bones, she explained. The reaction times required would exceed human neural capacity by a factor of 3. The sustained combat performance would require an oxygen intake impossible for human physiology. The audience nodded approvingly. This was exactly what they expected to hear. Scientific proof that human capabilities had been grossly exaggerated for propaganda purposes. Dren followed with technical analysis of the recordings themselves, showing how sophisticated digital manipulation could create convincing footage of impossible events. He displayed side-by-side comparisons with known propaganda pieces from other species, highlighting similar techniques and approaches. The human creators of these recordings showed impressive technical skill, Dren concluded, but they overreached in their ambitions. By making their fictional super soldier too capable, they created something obviously impossible that no reasonable analysis could accept as authentic. Laughter rippled through parts of the audience. Several delegates were taking notes, no doubt, planning to share this analysis with their home governments as an example of human deception and the Council's superior analytical capabilities. But in the diplomatic section, something was wrong. The human delegation was no longer looking relaxed. Their ambassador had gone pale, and there was urgent whispering among the group. Most disturbing of all, the military attaché had stopped reading his datapad and was staring at the screens. With what looked like growing horror, Vorth noticed the change in the human delegation and felt his confidence waver. He had spent weeks preparing this presentation, building what he thought was an airtight case for the recordings being fake. But the humans weren't acting like a delegation that had been caught in an elaborate deception. They were acting like people watching something they had never expected to see. Commander Kell was scheduled to present the final technical analysis, but she appeared at the podium looking deeply uncomfortable. Her morning meeting with Council. Security had apparently not gone well. The presentation was too far advanced to cancel, and too many diplomatic reputations were at stake. Military analysis confirms that the tactical approaches shown in these recordings are inconsistent with documented human combat doctrine, Kell said, her voice lacking conviction. The weapon selection patterns, movement strategies, and engagement techniques do not match any known human military training programs. But even as she spoke the words, Kell's eyes kept drifting to the human military attaché. Alex Kane had set down his datapad and was watching the recordings with intense focus, as if seeing them for the first time. His body language had changed. Completely. Where before he had seemed like a routine bureaucrat attending another boring meeting, now he looked like a predator that had just realized it was being hunted. The presentation continued with Vorth's conclusions. He displayed analysis charts showing digital manipulation markers, biological impossibilities, and tactical inconsistencies that proved the recordings were sophisticated fakes designed to intimidate the galaxy with fictional human capabilities. In conclusion, Vorth announced, these recordings represent impressive propaganda work, but should not be considered authentic documentation of human military capabilities. We recommend that all council members treat similar materials with appropriate skepticism and refer such recordings to the War Archive Division for proper analysis. The audience applauded enthusiastically. The presentation had been thorough, scientific, and convincing. Several delegates were already composing messages to their governments, spreading word that human military capabilities had been grossly exaggerated and that the council had successfully exposed their deception. But the applause died quickly when a voice from the diplomatic section spoke up. "Honorable Council President," the human ambassador said, rising from his seat, "the human delegation requests permission to respond to these findings." "Of course, Ambassador Reed," the council president replied graciously. "Please share your government's official response to our analysis." Ambassador Reed looked around the Great Hall, his face grave. "Before I respond officially, I believe my military attaché has something he needs to share with this assembly. Something that changes everything we just heard." All eyes turned to Alex Kane as he stood slowly. For a moment, he seemed like just another mid-level military officer, unremarkable in every way. But as he walked toward the podium, something about his movement caught Vorth's attention. The way he carried himself, the fluid precision of his steps, the unconscious tactical awareness of his surroundings. It was the same movement pattern they had analyzed in the recordings. "Honorable delegates," Kane said as he reached the podium, his voice carrying clearly through the sudden silence. "I have listened to your analysis with great interest. Your scientific methods are impressive, your technical skills admirable, and your conclusions—" He paused, looking directly at the screen still displaying frozen images from the battlefield. "Recordings. Your conclusions are completely wrong." The hall erupted in surprised murmurs, but Kane continued speaking. "These recordings are not propaganda. They are not faked. Every analysis you have presented, while technically accurate about normal human capabilities, is based on incomplete information about what humans can actually do when necessary." Vorth felt the blood drain from his face. This wasn't how exposed. Propagandists were supposed to respond. Kane wasn't defensive or embarrassed. He was speaking with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were talking about. "The figure you see in these recordings," Kane continued, "is not a normal human soldier. The tactical approaches do not match standard human military doctrine. The physical capabilities do exceed normal human biological limitations. You are correct about all of these things." The silence in the hall was absolute now. Every being present was hanging on Kane's words. "What you failed to consider," Kane said, his voice taking on a harder edge, "is that some humans are not normal soldiers, do not follow standard doctrine, and do not operate within normal biological limitations." He gestured to the screens showing the battlefield footage. "The person you see in these recordings performing these impossible feats, eliminating threats that should have been unstoppable." Kane looked directly at Vorth, and for a moment Vorth saw something in the human's eyes that made him understand exactly how wrong they had all been. "That person is me." The silence that followed Alex Kane's words was unlike anything the Grand Assembly Hall had ever experienced. 3,000 beings from across the galaxy sat frozen, their minds struggling to process what they had just heard. The human standing at the podium, looking completely ordinary and unremarkable, had just claimed to be the impossible figure in the recordings they had spent an hour proving was fake. "You're lying," Dren's voice cracked from the presentation area. "It's impossible. No human could do what we saw in those recordings." Kane turned his gaze to Dren, and the younger analyst took an involuntary step backward. There was something different about the human now, as if admitting the truth had removed a mask he had been wearing. His posture was straighter, his movements more fluid, and his eyes held a focus that made several nearby delegates suddenly realize they were looking at a predator that had been disguising itself as prey. "You analyzed my biology correctly," Kane said calmly. "Standard human physiology cannot perform those feats. Standard human neural response times cannot process tactical information at the speeds you recorded. Standard human muscle fibers cannot generate the force you documented." He gestured to Dr. Nex. "Your scientific analysis was thorough and accurate. For a normal human." "Then how?" Dr. Nex asked, her voice barely audible. "Because," Kane replied, "I stopped being a normal human a very long time ago." The implications hit the assembly like a shock wave. If Kane was telling the truth, then everything they thought they knew about human military capabilities was wrong. Every intelligence assessment, every strategic analysis, every peace treaty was based on incomplete information. Ambassador Reed stood again, his face pale but determined. "What my attaché means to say is that humanity has certain Specialized personnel who operate outside normal parameters. Specialized how? The council president demanded. Kane answered before the ambassador could speak. Enhanced, modified, improved. He held up his right hand, and with a subtle mental command, the synthetic skin retracted to reveal mechanical components underneath. Cybernetic nervous system for faster processing, reinforced skeletal structure, modified muscle fibers, enhanced cardiovascular system. Gasps echoed through the hall as delegates realized they were looking at technology far more advanced than anything they had imagined humans possessed. The Ghost of Europa project began 22 years ago. Kane continued, his voice taking on the tone of someone giving a military briefing. Volunteer soldiers underwent experimental enhancement procedures. The goal was to create operatives capable of handling threats that conventional forces could not engage. How many? Commander Kell asked from her seat, though her expression suggested she already suspected the answer would be disturbing. The Ghost program produced 47 successful subjects, Kane replied. All of us were declared dead in training accidents or classified operations. Officially, we don't exist. The number hit the assembly like a physical blow. 47. Enhanced humans, each potentially capable of the impossible feats shown in the recordings, and the galaxy's intelligence services had no idea they existed. Where are the others? The council president asked. Kane's expression grew darker. Most are deep undercover in various human colonies, living quiet lives until they're needed. Some died in operations that remained classified. A few... He paused. A few went rogue and had to be terminated by their former teammates. The weight of that admission settled over the assembly. Enhanced humans hunting other enhanced humans in conflicts the galaxy never knew existed. I was supposed to die 8 years ago during Operation Silent Thunder, Kane continued. The mission went wrong, my extraction failed, and human command assumed I was killed. I let them believe it. Found a quiet colony world. Tried to live a normal life. Then why are you here? Vorth asked, his voice shaking. Because normal life doesn't last long when the galaxy keeps trying to kill humans, Kane replied grimly. When the Krillians attacked the colony where I was living, I had 2 choices. Watch civilians die or break cover. He gestured to the screens, still showing the battlefield footage. I chose to break cover 4 times across 4 different worlds. Each time I told myself it would be the last. Each time I was wrong. Dr. Neck stood slowly, her scientific mind racing. The other recordings Vorth found. Those were you as well? All of them. Whenever human civilians were threatened and local forces were insufficient, I intervened. Kane's voice carried a weight of exhaustion that suggested years of carrying this burden alone. But why reveal yourself now? Commander Kell asked. You could have remained hidden. Kane looked directly at her. Because you were about to present these recordings to the entire galaxy as examples of human deception. Because every intelligence service in known space was about to update their assessments of human capabilities based on the assumption that we're weaker than we actually are. The implications were staggering. Military strategists throughout the galaxy would be revising threat assessments. Diplomatic negotiations would need to be reconsidered. Trade agreements and defense pacts would require new analysis based on the knowledge that humans possessed capabilities they had successfully hidden for decades. This changes everything, the council president said quietly. Yes, it does, Ambassador Reed agreed, finally finding his voice. My government authorized me to reveal certain classified information if this presentation proceeded as planned. We couldn't allow the galaxy to believe we were engaged in propaganda while simultaneously underestimating our actual capabilities. You mean there are more enhanced humans than just the Ghost program? Dren asked, his earlier confidence completely shattered. Kane and Reed exchanged glances. The Ghost program was discontinued after my supposed death, Kane said carefully, but human enhancement research didn't stop. It evolved. How evolved? the council president demanded. Classified, Ambassador Reed replied firmly. What I can tell you is that humanity has never been as vulnerable as our public military assessments suggested. We've simply preferred that potential adversaries underestimate rather than overestimate our capabilities. A delegate from the Krillian Empire stood, his massive frame trembling with what might have been fear or rage. Are you saying that one enhanced human destroyed an entire battalion of our finest warriors? Kane met the Krillian's gaze without flinching. I'm saying that when you attacked a human colony containing helpless civilians, you encountered someone who decided those civilians were worth protecting. The tactical situation was unfortunate for your forces. Unfortunate? The Krillian snarled. You speak of the deaths of honored warriors as if they were inconsequential. They were inconsequential, Kane replied with chilling calm. They chose to attack civilians. The moment they made that choice, their lives became worthless. The cold certainty in Kane's voice sent ripples of unease through the assembly. This wasn't a politician speaking, or even a soldier. This was something else entirely. A weapon that had learned to think and feel but had never forgotten what it was designed to do. What happens now? Vorth asked quietly. Kane returned to his seat in the diplomatic section, his brief moment of revelation ending as he once again became the unremarkable military attaché. Now you know that the recordings were real. You know that humans have capabilities we haven't advertised. You know that there are enhanced operatives scattered throughout human space. He looked around the great hall, meeting the eyes of delegates. From species that had once considered humans easy prey. What you don't know is how many of us there are now, where we are, or what we're capable of in the current generation of enhancement programs. I suggest you keep that uncertainty in mind during future diplomatic negotiations. Ambassador Reed stood again. The human government formally requests that all intelligence gathered during this presentation be classified at the highest levels. We prefer that knowledge of our enhanced personnel capabilities remain limited to this assembly. And if we refuse? Asked a delegate from the hegemony. Kane answered before the ambassador could speak. Then you'll discover that the recordings you've seen today represent obsolete capabilities from a discontinued program. Current human enhancement technology is significantly more advanced. The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. The humans weren't asking for secrecy. They were demanding it, backed by the implicit promise that revelation would lead to demonstration of capabilities that would make the Ghost program seem primitive by comparison. The council president called for a recess, but everyone knew the real business would be conducted in private meetings over the coming days. Intelligence services would be working frantically to assess what this revelation meant for their strategic planning. Military commands would be revising their threat assessments. Diplomatic corps would be crafting new approaches to human relations, based on the knowledge that humanity was far more dangerous than anyone had realized. As the assembly dispersed, Vorth found himself standing alone near the presentation podium, staring at the screens that still showed frozen images from the Terios 7 recordings. Everything he thought he knew about warfare, about human capabilities, about the balance of power in the galaxy had been shattered in the space of an hour. You did good work, a voice said behind him. Vorth turned to find Kane approaching, looking once again like a mild-mannered bureaucrat rather than a living weapon. I proved the recordings were fake, Vorth replied bitterly. You proved they were impossible for normal humans, Kane corrected. That's an important distinction. Your analysis was thorough and accurate. You just didn't know all the variables. How many variables don't we know? Vorth asked. Kane smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Enough to keep you awake at night, if you think about it too hard. As the human walked away, Vorth realized that the galaxy had just learned the most important lesson about humanity. They were very good at appearing harmless, right up until the moment they decided not to be.